Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's web conference. My name is Devyani Dey and I'll be serving as your moderator today. You'll be hearing a session from Sergey Chobarov. He is a Microsoft certified trainer, consultant, public speaker, Microsoft MVP in Azure, and a certified ethical hacker with over 10 years of experience. He's currently based in Russia. He'll be addressing the topic on this very timely subject, AZ103, virtual networking and Intersite connectivity. Before that, I'm going to put a quick poll and I would request all of you to kindly participate in the poll and let me know if I'm clearly audible to everyone. Thank you so much. And furthermore, if you face any audio or a video issue during the session, please feel free to drop in your queries in the Q&A panel, and I'm here to answer your questions. Now, I would like to turn today's event to your presenter. Sergey, you can take it from here.
Sure. Give me a second, I will share my screen.
Sure.
When I start to share my screen, it just turned me off.
Sorry?
When I start to share my screen, it just turned me off. So I had to reconnect. Alright, so now it has to work, hopefully.
Visible now.
Alright, so today we have a third day of our session. Let me just open on a full screen. And that's our middle tier. That's our middle day in our training course. That's about network connectivity. A couple of words about me. As usual, maybe you're the first time here. Maybe you haven't been there yesterday or Thursday. A couple of words about me. My name is Sergey. I'm an infrastructure team lead. I am a trainer also. I do some cloud stuff, and not only Azure, but other vendors as well. So I have some knowledge in AWS, for instance. And sometimes on this training, people ask about how this service in Azure related to AWS. So if you have some that question, you can discuss them. All right. Our session will have the same structure as any other session in this course. So first, in part A, we talk about certification in general. We do it every time because we're not sure that people who attend previous sessions, so we have to give information about certification every day, every time. Then the major part B, is about our technical content, and the part C, short part about just practice questions. All right, so certifications in general. Of course, on the first day, it was the longest, but it was the long part. But then now we make it shorter, but still we need to talk about that just in case. All right. So about certifications. Certifications now are different because before last year, Microsoft had certification based on the product. For instance, SharePoint administration or Share Exchange basics, Exchange advanced, and something like that. But now they're a bit different. Now the certifications based on job role. Of course, in job role, products are involved, but still, it's different. It's based on what you do on your job. So now certifications are a bit different. And we have a number of certifications in Azure. First of that certification, Azure Administrator. We'll talk about this certification the whole week. What also we have from a certification perspective, Azure Developer, Azure Solutions Architect, Azure DevOps Engineer, Azure Security Administrator, and so on. So certifications now based on what you do, not just a product, but what you do with this product on your day-to-day job. And these job role certifications, now they have levels. And the first level is Azure Fundamentals. That's not about job role. That's about product. So that's introductory level to certification. And this certification is more. This certification is for everybody, for people who are not really aware of Azure. I mean, of course, aware of Azure. They don't work with Azure regularly. They don't have the technical experience, but they know about Azure and they want to be certified. Like users, like salespeople, for all who just want to show their skills, they know the service. But the next level is associate. In associate level, we have to demonstrate that we know how to implement. So it's a bit different. So here we need to know how to configure, how to deploy, and the administrator on the associate level. So on our level, on our exam, we need to demonstrate we know how to configure services. And the next certification level is expert, and expert is more complicated. Generally, expert certification is more. It's not only implementation, but the understanding how to build a solution. All right, and the path to become Azure Fundamentals certified. You should know concepts, cloud concepts, Azure services in general, and how pricing works, security, just the basics about that. So how cloud secures and stuff like that. And plus one exam, AZ900, and that's it. That's a cloud. That's Azure Fundamental certification. About Azure Administrator, about our exam, there's a different number of skills, and plus one exam, AZ103. You'll become Azure Administrator Associate. So, in our exam, we have structural. We have different number of questions. First, in exam, we have test questions. So we have just normal tests that we used to. That's the number of questions that you need to answer. But we also have labs, hands-on labs and exams. That's new to Microsoft to have a labs on exam, the exams. What is labs? Labs is like a challenge that you need to complete. So you have a number of tasks, and you have to complete them. And if you were successful, then you'll get scored. Tasks mean something like create a virtual network, connect this virtual network to another virtual network, and this task that you have to be really accurate there and read guidance really well. Because, for instance, if you have a task to connect two virtual networks, and when you create this virtual networks, you just confuse the names, then you won't get your score because it evaluates automatically. And if names not match, you won't get your score. So just be really, really accurate there. And what is my suggestion to you when you do a lab? Don't wait until operation finished. Go to the next task. For instance, if you have a task to deploy virtual machine or even virtual gateway, don't wait for them to be completed. Just start deploy and go to the next task. Because time is a really big challenge when we do labs on our exam. And be aware that after the lab, you will get a couple of more questions because Microsoft needs time to evaluate the lab. So after the lab, you will have, oh, by the way, how it looks like. So first you have a number of questions, about 20, 25 questions before lab, because Microsoft needs time to deploy your lab. Then you do a lab, and after that, you'll have a couple of more questions, maybe 5, maybe 10, because Microsoft needs time to evaluate your lab. So, and what else do we have? We have case studies in our case in our exams, and case studies. That's when we have a company just with information about this company, and we have a number of questions about this case. And my suggestion to you here: don't read the whole case, just read the question and find the references in this question to your case, to this section of this case, and read down. And usually you get enough information to answer. Don't read the whole case because it takes too much time. All right. So in our exam, we have a number of domains, and we're in the middle here. So that's our third day. And I have to prepare to them. Microlearning, support for Microsoft Learning is a great source for that. Online courses that you do right now, they're doing right now, and instructor training that you may take class. And what's good about class that you may not only listen to trainer but also do labs. It's really important because for this exam you need to know how to configure. Some additional resources. And so let's start. We're in the module 3, virtual networks and Intersite connectivity. Okay. As usual, I don't do lots of I don't show lots of slides. I prefer demos, but this module will contain more slides than others because in networks, sometimes I need to explain concepts, and so just demo is not enough. So I need to show some slides. All right, virtual networks. When we're talking about virtual networks, there are a number of services related to virtual networks. And of course, the first service virtual network itself. And virtual network, that's a logical representation of your network. And of course, we need virtual networks to connect resources to each other. And in our network, we have some. I think this I can show. I'm glad to show. So let me jump demo here. I'm gonna go to my resource group, and I click Add, and let me find virtual network. And click Create. So the best practice is to, even if you deploy virtual machines, pre-create your virtual network. Don't create the virtual network with your virtual machine. Pre-create it before. Okay, so let's start. First, I need to give a name to my virtual network. As usual, let's give a name like AZ103 demo. Then address space. That's quite important. We need to give an address space, and what is really important that this address space shouldn't be overlapped with networks that we want to connect, with other networks that we want to connect. For instance, if I use in the future VPN between my Azure regions or my on-premise network, or maybe I will use network peering, and no, this network shouldn't be overlapped. So when you plan your network, do it properly. Don't just put any words, any numbers here. Plan properly. For me, for the demo, it's fine. I'll keep default. But for the real world, once again, plan properly. Don't create networks that will be overlapped. Of course, if network is completely isolated, that's fine. But if you want to connect them to each other, then you need to create a unique namespace for each network. All right, I will keep this default. That's the maximum. I think that's the maximum. Yeah, 16 is the maximum address space. Let me just try to play with that. Yeah, 16 is the maximum, and the medium number 29. Yeah, 29 if I try to use 30. 30 whoops. 31. What? Okay, 31 is a minimum. 32. Let's try 28. So my address space contains 16 address at this moment. Let's do 24, and it's a classic network. All right, so let's move on. Then we'll go to subscription, resource group, and allocation as usual, and then we need to create a subnet. And here, be aware that my subnet equals to my address space. So maybe I should adjust my subnet or my address space. Let me create, I think the lowest number, 30, is 29 in the rest space of subnet. Yeah. Sub. So that's the smallest sub. Then we have DDoS protection. That's a bit out of scope, but in Azure, we have DDoS protection for every network. DDoS protection basic means that this network protects from, I would say, general DDoS on Azure services. But DDoS protection standard means that your company, your network, will be specifically protected from DDoS. So in case of BASIC, Microsoft monitors DDoS attack to Azure in general, but in Azure for other clients as well. But DDoS protection standard in this case, Microsoft will monitor your particular network and your particular services. So maybe not Azure attack, but maybe your particular application attack. And in this case, Microsoft will react much faster if you have like DDoS standard. But it's quite expensive, so don't play with that if you don't really need it, because the protection standard is cost a lot. All right, so we'll talk about service endpoints in the future, and firewall. Firewall. You know what? Let's enable service endpoints. So we can enable service endpoints for this for this network, and in this case, uh, some services may be accessed from this network. So we can configure that some services may be accessed from the network and without an access from outside. For instance, if I want my virtual machine to access blob storage, we talked about blob storage yesterday, but I don't want this request to go from the internet, and I just want this request to go from inside of the Azure. I can enable service endpoints here, and for it to say that storage. So in this case, my virtual machines inside of this network can have an access to my storage without route to the internet. They just go to the storage, use the storage from inside the network. They don't go to public internet to access storage. And firewall. Firewall, that's out of scope of this exam. That's about you'll find firewall in AZ500, but let me just talk about a little about firewall. Azure Firewall, that's a stateful firewall inside of the Azure, and you may use this firewall to filter, not only filter packets, but create some stateful rules and control traffic inside of outside of your network. So in this module, we'll talk about network security groups. And network security group is it's just a packet filtering. Firewall is more stateful and it relies on your connection. But just for your knowledge, that we have Azure Firewall to control traffic in our virtual network. And work with firewall, that's more work with routes. We'll talk about routes tomorrow. But we won't cover firewall in this exam, and you won't have questions about firewall in this exam. So let me create my network. Let's wait a couple of seconds. It has to be quick. Wait. Let me go to resource. I have lots of resources called AZ100 demo. All right, so let me open up my Word network and let's see what we have. So I have an address space here, my subnets. I can add some new subnets. Okay, let's go protected. And the range will be let's do 30. 29. So as you can see here, I have two subnets. And let's discuss why I cannot have more than network a subnet more than 29. Because as you can see, Azure reserved 5 addresses in each subnet. They reserve this address for, by the way, Microsoft doesn't reveal for what they reserve, but I guess it's for internal routers, for DNS, for some, maybe for broadcast. So they reserve a couple of addresses. And if I use 29, then I have only 3 addresses for me. But if I use 30, then I don't have any addresses for my usage. Only all will be reserved for Azure. So I can have address range um, less than 29. All right. As you can see here, we configured our network during creation, and then we can just do some configuration afterwards. But you can change an address space, but it's better to create it properly during. It's better to create configure properly during creation. All right. So that's about virtual networks and subnets. And virtual machines that will use our subnet, they may be connected to different subnets at the same to multiple subnets at the same time, because some virtual machines they have multiple NICs, network adapters. So it's possible to have connection to different subnets for one virtual machine. All right. So next topic is IP address. That's quite an important topic for understand it, because uh, uh, to communicate with just have subnet is not enough. We have to have our services. They have to have IP addresses, and we have two types of addresses: private IP addresses and public IP addresses. So private, they work only inside of virtual network, and the public IP addresses they can be used with it as usual. And for private and public IPs, there is a sometimes misunderstanding between when IT pros they try to use the patterns that they use on premises in Azure, and some it not always work. So let me first show you about private IPs, and then we'll discuss about public IPs. So first about let's talk about private. Let me open up any virtual machine, fast and scale. And here for this virtual machine, let's zoom in. I have public IP and private IP, and my private IP is 10.3.0.5. This IP was assigned to this virtual machine automatically. So, and this IP may change after I start my virtual machine and after I start this machine and start again, it may change. So IP addresses here, private IP addresses, they're automatic, so they're assigned dynamically, and they may change after you start the virtual machine again. And as you can see here, my IP address is 5, I mean 10.3.0.5, and we start our IP address from 4. If we use just a classic normal address space like 24 mask 24 mask 24, then you'll start from 4 because 1, 2, and 3 reserved for Azure. So only from 0, 1, 2, and 3 is reserved for Azure, and only the 4 start to be used uh, by by us. So I had address 5 for this machine. This address may change because dynamic by default. If I need to make it static, I can create I can create my static address for my virtual machines, for my load balancers, for my application gateways. So I just need to go to my virtual machines network settings, go to network default. And here I'm going to my network interface, my IP configuration, and here I can, as you can see, my private IP is dynamic, and I don't have public IP because my virtual machine stopped. Let me just click here, and let's say that my IP address is static, and I want to have this IP address with different 10. And click save. It has to, okay. It has to give me a new address. As you can see, now my address is static and it's different. All right, so that's about my private IPs. They are dynamic by default, but I can change them from static to static. It's completely normal if you want to change them. But if you have a huge network, it may be quite tricky to assign static IP addresses. So don't forget that you can assign addresses during deployment when you use ARM templates. So think about ARM templates and static IPs if you want to have static private IPs. All right, so that's about private IPs. But what about public? Sorry. What about public IP? We have also public IP, and with public IP, my machine will be accessible from the internet for everybody. And for some services, we cannot assign static public IP. Let me just show it to you. Public IP, that's a separate item, separate resource. As you can see here, my virtual machine stopped and my public IP unassigned. Let me go here. Let me see my public IP. So that's my public IPs. Let me see public IP itself. It's called Bastion Scale IP. Here we go. So generally, I can use this IP for any other virtual machine. So I can touch this IP address from my virtual machine from its adapter and assign this IP to other machine. So public IPs, that's a separate item, that's a separate resource. So I can use this resource with with other machines. As you can see here, I don't have any IP because the machine that associated with this IP stopped. If I wish, I can deassociate this IP and associate it with another machine. So if I go to configuration, I can see this IP is dynamic, but I can make it static. But I cannot choose my static IP. So of course, static IP will be assigned by Microsoft. But this IP won't change when I restart my virtual machine. And I will have some additional charges with this IP when it's static. Let me keep dynamic for this IP. I have statics for some of those, but it's fine for virtual machines, so we can configure static IPs for virtual machines and for our gateways. for load balancer, but we cannot configure static IP for application gateway and VPN gateway. What does it mean? It means that if we stop this service, we may have different IP after the service restart. Let me show it to you really quickly. I have application gateway. They can start and stop and start, stop. Find it. Application gateway. And now this gateway has this IP. And if I try to go to configuration, it says you cannot make it static because it's assigned to gateway, application gateway, and it's only a bit dynamic for this resource. Let me try to play with that. Let me stop my application gateway. It takes time, so I can stop it, but I cannot start it from here because it takes lots. Like of course I can start it but it takes lots of time. Let me try to just stop it. Yeah, let's see application gateway stop lazy application gateway. So now it's stopped. Or it was stopped. Because it was too fast. Let's see. Application gateway. No, it was stopped. Let's try to start it. Once again it takes time. So yeah. Oh, I guess I need to change my subscription. Get easy subscription. Copy. Select. Oh, different subscription. That's one. Let's see. Get easy application gateway. Let's see if it works. It is. So let me try to stop. It takes time. So it may take 30 seconds or even more to start application gateway, and it takes a couple of minutes to start it. But I will just show you that IP address will be released, and when I start it, maybe we'll back to this service a bit later because it takes time to start it. You'll see that IP address will be different, or maybe different. Okay, so just be aware that some services, if you stop them, they will release the IP public IP address, and when you start them again, you may have different IP address. All right, let's go on. Service endpoints. As I mentioned before, service endpoint, that's the endpoint. That's some sort of service in Azure that can be accessed directly from the network. Because generally we have the services in Azure that access and maybe access directly from the internet. But in some cases, we might need to have access to this service only from inside of our network, and don't have an access from the internet. As I mentioned before, um, for instance, storage. Maybe we need to some storage that supports my first machines, but people from the internet, they don't have to have an access to this storage. So on virtual machines in my network, they have to have access to this storage account, but not everybody from the internet. So in this case, you may create a service endpoint as a storage, uh, and this storage will be available only from from this network, and access to the storage will be given from the Azure backbone, not from the internet. Okay, so if I go to to oh, stop. Let me restart. Let me restart. Oh, let me just show you about that's about IP address again. Let me just show you that I don't have IP address anymore. And let me start again. One, as I mentioned before, starting off gateway will take a lot of time. So we'll back to this IP address in maybe 10 minutes or more. So it takes time. Just be aware of that. So let me go to service endpoint right now. So first, let me go to my virtual networks. And virtual networks, let me go to service endpoints. As you can see here, this network um, has a storage in the subnet. And if I deploy some storages in this network and create storage and create a network security group that will allow access to this storage from this network, then I will have access only from this network. So just be aware about service endpoints. It's quite handy stuff to, especially with some internal services, they has to be accessed only from the network, from inside the virtual network, from inside the Azure, but not from outside. All right. So um, let's go to Azure DNS. Oh, by the way, about endpoints. Uh, to configure that, we go to uh, storage, for instance, and if I scroll down, I can see firewalls and virtual networks. So from here, I can say, so this storage will be available from network only, so from particular network only, like my AZ demo. And in this case, for subnet. And in this case, it won't be, if I save it, in this case, it will be available only from this network. And has to automatically create some network security groups for that. All right, so let's go to DNS. DNS. in Azure, we have DNS, and you don't when you create your Azure tenant, you have Azure AD domain, and this Azure AD domain will have a DNS domain with name that you register .onmicrosoft.com, and that's a free name that you may have in Azure when you just create a tenant. Uh, but this name is not really suitable for our services, and we should configure our custom domain name. To do that, let me show it to you. Because I think in this Azure AD, I don't have any custom domain names, but let me show you the process. Then I will show you the result. So if I go to my custom domain names in my Azure AD, and here I have only this on Microsoft name. If I want to add custom domain, I just click here. I say my custom domain name has to be like capitalism.com. Click end domain, but I have to prove that this name owned by me. So I have to prove it with TXT record or NX. And of course I can't do it because I don't have a control over capitals.com domain. But if I have it, I have to create this TXT record in my DNS zone, my controls.com DNS zone, and then click verify. Then Microsoft can verify that this domain owned by me. But I don't own this domain, so we can get rid of that. I simple it. Oh, this type domain name. So, all right, let me show you my another account that I already have my domain names configured. I use my on Microsoft user to connect, but in this tenant I have lots of domain names configured. Go to Azure AD and my custom domain names. I have a number of them. So this is available by default, and that this my names that I connect to this account. And I also verify with my personal domain. All right. Resources. Uh, so that's about domain names, and you can just configure your custom domain. And then when you use your Azure AD, then your name will be you'll use your custom domain, not the name that Azure gives you. And here we can configure it via Azure, so we can control our DNS name from Azure. So I can just find Azure DNS zones. I don't want to show it to you how to configure that because I don't want to mess with DNS. But we can just find DNS zones, add, and just create a zone here, and I can configure this zone right from Azure. So I may not go to my register like GoDaddy or other to control my DNS zone. So I can just do it from Azure here. So you can host your DNS zone here and manage your records here and do some delegations. So you can control your Azure, your DNS, public DNS right from Azure. And what we also have that's quite new feature that's in preview now. So you probably won't have it on exam, but maybe in the future. DNS for private domains. Let me just show you. If I go to my private DNS zones, click add, and here I can add any DNS zone I want. Just create a quick contoso.com, click create, and click create. And in this case, this zone will be completely private, and this zone won't go to the internet. This zone will work only from my virtual network. So I don't need to verify the zone. I may use any zone I want in controls.com that I don't own, and it will be fine. This zone is a private only for the virtual network. So this is private DNS zone, and I can use it only for my internal network. So for my resource in my my virtual network, they can have any domain name, any DNS zone I want. So I just link this private DNS zone to AZ demo. And I click OK. And it's going to link to my DNS zone. If I go to my overview, so here I have only startup authority, but I can add some records as well. And let me just say www.com, and the IP address will be I don't care if it's down, let's say 4.0.4. I don't know if it exists or not. Okay, I create this record. So I can do everything I want here because this DNS zone is completely private. So any conflict that may occur with any public services won't touch me because this zone is isolated to this virtual network. As you can see here, I'll link to my virtual network. So that's private DNS zones. Be aware of them. They may be useful. Um, they may be useful in some cases that we need to just have a particular DNS zone with a particular name, but we don't own this name. So that's DNS and private DNS zones. All right. Just here. Let me jump to another topic. And this topic, I would say that's the uh, primate topic for virtual network, the most confusing topic for manies. So we're gonna talk a lot about this virtual network security groups, and after this topic, I will give the word to Vianney. All right. So network security groups, what's that? Network security groups, that's um, filtering inside the virtual network that allows you to deny or allow some traffic in. It looks like a firewall, but instead of classic firewalls, I mean, instead of firewalls, these networks, they are stateless, and I will talk about that a bit later. So you need to configure your rules like inbound and outbound and allow and deny traffic from and to different locations. Network security groups can be associated with subnet or a network interface. So network security group may not only work with networks, but with network adapters as well. And this how rules looks like. And let me just jump to demo and show it to you really quickly. Okay, so let me go to my network. Let me zoom out here. Let me go to my virtual network. And this virtual network, if I go to um, no, not here. I cannot see it from here. I can see it from virtual machines, but not from the network. Let's see. Um, I have to see. Maybe I didn't assign um, any security groups. Hmm. All right, let's try from something else. Let me go to my network. Up here, we go to another resource group. Let me find my virtual network here. And I have some subnets here. I still don't see. And all right, looks like I cannot see it from here. I need to, or I need to click here. I need to click here, subnet. Yeah, I can see it from the interface. I need to click this the subnet, and I see my network security group that associated with subnet. Let me check if I have network security group there. My network subnet, subnet, and yeah, I don't have any security groups here. I don't have any. So let me show you how to configure that. So if I want to protect my network with some filtering, I need to add network security group to this subnet. Just click network security group. I have a number of them here, and I can associate with existing security groups. I can create a new one. Let me create a new one first. So I'm going to network security groups. Disappear. Network security groups. And create a new one. We call it, as usual, AZ103 demo. Put it in this resource group. We create. And so let's see. And after creating my network security group, by default, I have a number of rules. And these rules are inbound and outbound. So by default, I have 3 rules for inbound and 3 rules for outbound. And the last rule is deny all. And everything else that I create in my network will allow something that is denied by the last rule. So everything that is not configured in my rules will be denied. So let's see what we have in inbound and outbound. Let's go to inbound security rules. Zoom in. Here we have, as usual, deny all as the last rule, and we have 2 rules. The first rule allows everything inside of the virtual network, so from virtual network to virtual network. And the second one allows communicate with load balancing. That's it. So everything else will be denied. And if I want to, for instance, connect to um, my resource inside of this virtual network, but I'm outside of the virtual network. I'm outside of the Azure, and then I cannot do it because I don't have a rule for that. And if I want to allow to connect from RDP or SSH or outside, I need to configure this rule. Let me just show it to you. I click add. I have to say from which source. I can say any, or I can say from particular IP address or service. Because I want to connect from everywhere, I would say any. And what source ports range has to be? I would say any two because maybe I use port forwarding. I would keep my port sources as a then destination. Destination may be an IP address particular or virtual network or application security group. I will show you about application security group in the later. So it's a particular address or virtual network. I will keep any here as well. And destination port will be, for instance, 3389. The protocol and the action will be allowed. Let me give a name 3389. Now what's important, I have to give a priority for this rule. The lowest priority is 100. Um, and it's a really good idea to give priorities with step with a big step. Like if you click here, you'll see that recommended step leave gaps between rules. The recommended step is 100. For instance, on the next rule, it's better to give priority 200. Um, Slowest and click add. Why do we need to have some gaps between our priorities? Because in the future, maybe I need some rule that has to be between. Oh, let me just create a rule with priority 101. Uh, so I have two rules. One is 100, the second one is 101. And maybe in the future, I need to create a rule that has to be between these rules. Because if priority is higher, then it will override everything that was previous in a low priority. So priority 100 will override everything that is low. It has lower priority. And maybe I need to create a rule that has to be between these two. But now I cannot do it because my priorities won't allow me. So that's why you should assign priority with step 100. So I can do 200. And now if I need to add the rule between them, I can just do Sage, for instance. And the priority will be 150 and the port 22.2. Of course, for my ports, they don't conflict each other, so priorities may be any. But when you have a real-world infrastructure and different services, and these services may have some conflicts, then it's really handy to play with priorities. So that's about inbound security rules. Let me go to outbound. And here I have similar rules, but as you can see here, I have a rule that allows everything to the internet. So by default, every every single virtual machine, every single service in my virtual network can have an access to the internet. If I want to control it, I can add some additional rules, but by default, um, every source in my network uh, can have an access to the internet. And of course, I have a rule that gives access from virtual network to virtual network. Everything else is denied. So I have a security network security group, and I need to associate the security group with network interface or subnet. So I don't have any associations, and I have to associate it with network or subnet. Let me associate with network. With, let's see, and now it's associated. What do you need to remember? These rules are stateless. NSG rules are stateless. What does it mean stateless? This means that these rules are not aware of anything else that any other rules that you have in your network security groups or in your firewall or somewhere else. So it means it treats any connection, any request separately. So if you have, for instance, it's not a good practice, but if you have virtual machine, inside of the network that protected by network security group, and this virtual machine, the network adapter of this virtual machine, has own network security group, then you have to configure your rules twice. Let me show you maybe I have. Yep, sources. Um, this, let's see, networking. So, let me zoom out. I can see here that I have a network security group that attached to my subnet. I don't have security group attached to this virtual machine. But let me just try to go to my network interface. Network security group. I have network security group on the interface level. Oh yeah, that's right. I have it on the interface level. Yeah, I have two network security group here. Right. I have it on the interface level, and I have it. And I have it on the network level. So, so I have two network security groups attached to the same machine. One non-group on the network level, on the subnet level, and the second on the network adapter level. So if I want traffic to be allowed, I need to double my rules. So let's see. I have port 3389 open, and I have this port here on my network adapter, network security group, assigned to the network security group assigned to my network adapter, and that's also my network adapter, and on my network level. If I miss one of those, then my RDP won't work. Network security groups are stateless, and they treat every single connection separately. And if I have my network security groups on different levels, I need to double my rules. It's not a really good practice to have two network security groups attached on the level of subnet and level of network adapter, because it's too much configuration. but you have this ability, and just be aware of that you need to configure it twice. And the same with outbound. All right, so that's about network security groups. And in network security groups, we have a type of groups that are called application security groups. Application security groups. And these application security groups, um, let me try to explain that. Why do we need them? Application security groups. That's a different entity, and application security group doesn't have any rules. So as you can see, if I create application security group, it doesn't have anything. It doesn't have web addresses or anything else. It's just an entity with name, and that's it. But what can I do with this group? I can associate this app security group with my network adapter. And then use these application security groups in my rules to control traffic inside of the network, inside of the virtual network. Let me just show to you. So let me show you what I have first. I have 3 virtual machines here. Let me sort it by type. I have 3 virtual machines. I have more. Yeah. Let me go to my user group. So let me sort by type again. And then out. So I have virtual machines called up tier, DB tier, and web tier. So it's like an application with 3 tiers. And I'm here. Last name on the web tier. And they all inside of the same virtual network. So let me check my address. Config 10.0.0.4. So let me try to ping my up tier. Works. And let me ping my DB tier. It works. But what if I want to control the flow of my traffic inside of this network? Maybe I don't want this web tier to communicate directly with DB tier, because usually in 3-tier network, a web tier has to communicate with from with up tier, but not with DB tier. So DB tier has to communicate with up tier, but not with front end. We can do it. We can do it with application security groups. Now let me show you that I have 3 application security groups, or even 4. Up tier, DB tier, and web tier, and they all associated with virtual machines. And if I go to my my network security group, I can get a rule to prevent me to communicate between different application security groups. Let me show you. Let me start ping db minus t db tier. All right. I'm creating a rule that will say that I want to application security group called web tier for any port, and destination will be DB tier for any port, And this rule will deny traffic, all traffic from web tier to DB tier, and call web to DB and click OK. All right, so let's see the result. Still pending. Oh, there you go. Timeout. And now we don't have communication with them. So I can use network security groups not only to control traffic between services and from other between networks and internet, I can even control inside of the network if I use application security groups with network security groups. All right, so it's time to make a break and give a word to Devyani, and she has some questions to you. So Devyani, please.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sergey. So while Sergey takes a quick break, I would like to ask a couple of questions from the audience. First of all, please let me know how has been the audio-video experience so far. The question and the options will appear on your screens now. Thank you so much for feedback. And the next question I would like to know, how is the impact of the content used in this workshop so far? The question and the options will appear on your screens now. I would also like to let everybody know that your feedback through these poll questions are really important to us because these help us plan our upcoming sessions. So your maximum participation into these poll questions are very necessary. Thank you so much for your feedback. Now I would like to hand over the session back to Sergey if he's ready.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Let me share the screen again.
Sure.
Let me know when you see it.
Definitely. Sure, your screen is visible now.
All right, thanks. Now we're gonna talk about intersite connectivity. That's a huge topic, and I would say it's the last topic for today's session. And we'll talk about VPNs, peering, and express route. Intersite and between sites. Okay, so first topic is VNet peering. VNet peering is one way how can we connect virtual networks to each other. So you can connect virtual networks, and then these networks can communicate. And as I mentioned before, to use network peering, you have to be really plan really carefully your address space, or you'll have conflicts. In case of peering, communication will go through Azure Backbone, so it's more stable, fast, and more isolated. And we have two types of peering, regional and global. So we'll talk about that quite soon. Let me jump to demo, as usual. Let me play with networks. So, let me go to our network. And by default, all resources of my network, they don't have an access. So virtual network is isolated. And my resource inside of this virtual network, they don't have an access to resources of other networks. Let me just show you that really quickly. If I wish to have an access, I need to configure peering. So, but I don't have any peering for any network. Let me show you. So, let me go to. I think I need to go back to my virtual machines and show it to you. Let me go back to my up tier or web tier. I think I have this connection downloaded. Yep, I have it. So let me connect. And I cannot, at the moment, I cannot communicate with my other networks. Let's see. ipconfig, so 0.0.0.4, and here I have virtual machine that also in Azure. Let's see my other space. 10.2.0.4. So in this case, let me try to communicate. So my address is 10.2.0.4. If I try to ping 10.0.0.4, it works. But if I try to ping 10.2.0.4, it doesn't work. So these networks, they don't have any communications between each other. And if I want them to communicate, I need to configure peering or VPN between them. Let me show to you how to do that. So if I go to my network and I go to my peering and click add, and I need to give a name. Let's give a name. Tier 2 Commando. And here I need to choose my virtual network. Let me find my virtual network. To be honest, I don't remember his name. So let me just check the name of the network really quickly for this resource. Let's go to virtual machines. This VM. Let's see what networks do we have here? This network called def. All right, so I need to peer with def network. Let's go back and create a new, sorry, not here. Let's go to peering again, and let's create a new peering. So tiered to def. All right, so I'm gonna choose my def network, and as you can see here, name of the peering has to be given. Just an easy random demo. All right, but I'm not always can choose. Oh, by the way, let me call it def to tier to be consistent. Not always can have an access to this network. For instance, if this network was delegated to me, and I don't have a full access to other networks, I may not see them on the portal like that. In this case, I may say that I know my resource ID and put it manually. So I may do it on this way. Let me just show you again. We'll create it again. How to know resource ID. If I go to properties, here's the resource ID. So I can copy this resource ID and I can paste it to my peering. I need to copy, of course, the different network resource ID. All right, let me create a peering. Finally. So from here to def, it will call tier to def. And I know my name of the network. And I call def to tier. And I have a couple of options here. First of all, by default, it asks me to allow network access in both directions. I want to allow. And what can I also do? I can allow or deny forward traffic. For instance, maybe in a network, I have traffic that's not sourced by this network. For instance, traffic from appliance. And in this case, I may allow or deny this traffic from forward traffic. By default, it's denied. And I also allow or deny gateways. I don't have gateways in my network, so that's why it's not allowed here. But if I have VPN gateway in one of my network, I can allow to usage of this VPN gateway in other network. All right, let me click OK here. Let's try it again. Okay. Connected. Still no. Still no. It has to create a route automatically. I don't need to create the routes manually. But still I have. All right. So that's peering between networks inside of my region. So it works regionally still now. But if I wish, and if I need it, I can create a network between regions. So if I see my virtual network, I can see other regions: North Europe, Central US, East US, and I can connect other regions. That's called global peering. Let me call global. And I want to connect to USNet, for instance. Let's call global for USNet as well. In this case, some of the settings may not work. For instance, I cannot configure gateway transit for that. So as you can see here, this option is not allowed. But we can also have a peering between networks in different regions. So that's called global peering. I need to see my rules. Maybe it's something tonight. All right. So that's about network peering. And with network peering, I can configure my communication between different virtual networks. And I don't need to create a VPN to allow or deny this traffic. By the way, do you remember we play with public IP address of our gateway? Let's see what we have here. I think it was started. Application gateway. And as you can see here, my application gateway has absolutely different IP address, public IP address. And that was an old topic, of course, but I promise you that we'll go back to here and check. So now my gateway has completely different IP address because I stop it and start again. All right, so let's talk about VPNs and express routes because that's option. It's also option to connect our networks and our on-premise infrastructure. So we have to talk about that as well. Oh, by the way, there are really important stuff that network peering is not transitive. So I cannot have networks peered in a way like I want to peer my network number 1 with number 2, and network number 2 peered with network number 3. It doesn't mean that network 1 and network 3 will be peered automatically. So in this case, you have to create a peer for network number 1 and network number 3. It doesn't have automatic peering, the transitive peering. All right. So still timeout. Okay, so we need to create a route. We need to create a route from one network to another because it doesn't do it automatically. We'll talk about routes, routes on the on our next session tomorrow. But still, we need to have a route. It doesn't have a route. It doesn't create a route automatically for me. All right. So let's talk about VPNs. I think I have some VPN gateways. But first, let's talk. Oops. Sorry, I missed my slides. Let me stop my screen sharing and open them again. All right, so let me share my screen again. This time we'll talk about VNet to VNet with VPNs. We won't configure VPN from on-prem to our Azure, but I will talk about that, and I'm gonna show you how to do that and what requirements do we have. But we'll talk more about VNet to VNet, so how to configure connectivity between different networks with VPNs. So uh, um, we can connect to networks in a different way, not only with peering, but with VPN. Uh, I would say that the configuration of VNet to VNet with VPN is more classic because peering for between networks in different regions, that's like a new feature. It was released on last year, but VNet to VNet with VPN, it was quite old, and we have it for a long time. So we can configure VPN connectivity between two networks in different regions, or in one region if you wish. Or we can configure connectivity between your on-premise site to Azure, and it's site-to-site connectivity. In case of VNet to VNet, we have less number of requirements. If we configure site-to-site, we have requirements for on-premise devices. All right, so how to configure VNet to VNet? First of all, we need to configure. Let me just open up the slide. We need to create a subnet, of course, of VNet and subnets, and we have to create a subnet for the gateway, and we have to create a gateway in this subnet. Let me show you that. Let me open up this network, go to subnets, and here I have to create the subnet called gateway subnet. And be aware that you need an address space for this for this subnet, because if you, for instance, for example, if you use address space like 24 mask 24, and here you have, let me get rid of that. I hope I will get rid of that. Okay, so, and if I have my address range for the subnet the same, let me do it. So my subnet space equals to my address space of my whole network, and I try to create a gateway, I may not have enough address space for this gateway. Let me check again. So my address space, yep, I don't have enough address space for the gateway. So let's try 10.5.0.0 24. It says, oh, no way, don't have enough. 29. No, I don't have enough addresses for this subnet. So I need to adjust my subnet or my address space. Let me play with my subnet. And now I'll try to get a gateway subnet gateway, and now I can do it. So click OK. And now I create a subnet for the gateway. Because if I don't have it and I try to create a gateway, it will say no way, I cannot create a gateway in this subnet in this virtual network because it doesn't have a subnet for the gateway. So the next step is to create a virtual network gateway. Let me go to gateways. I have a couple of them. Let me add the new one. As usual, AZ103 demo. Put in the region to West Europe. This gateway will be for VPN, and this gateway will be route-based or policy-based. And route-based and policy-based, it's a different. It will use dynamic routing or static routing, and it depends what you need, dynamic or static. So I need to choose my virtual network. And public IP address, create a new one, or use existing. Let's call it AZ103 demo GW IP. All right, so let me create this gateway, and just for your understanding, it takes time. It takes a lot of time. It may take 5, 10, 15 minutes, depends. And be aware, especially for your exam, when you create a gateway, you need to plan your time properly, because you may not have enough time to wait for this gateway. All right, let me go to gateways back. And I have a couple of them here. So I have gateway in West Europe, and I have a gateway in Central Europe. And let me try to play with them. All right, so I'm going to connections, and I can add new connection and type, let's call it US connection. And connection type will be VNet to VNet or site to site. I don't touch ExpressWrite at this time. So for my purpose, it will be VNet to VNet, and I have to choose the second virtual network gateway. It will be UV scale, and I have to set up pre-shared key. So 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, and click OK. So now it's creating the connection, and let's wait a couple of minutes. Oh, while it's creating connection, let me talk about site-to-site connections. Was created site-to-site. I can create a connection between my Azure and my on-prem site. So if I go to my local network gateway, create my local network gateway, and I can create the local network gateway that will represent my local gateway on-prem. But what is really important, that I need to configure my local network gateway, Azure VPN gateway on-prem. I need to configure my local gateway, and the configuration will depend on my local network gateway provider and type. Let me just show it to you. Create a local network gateway. It has to have a link to my on-prem configuration. Not here. Let's try here. Nope, not here. Let's try something else. VPN gateway. That's just, oh, here we go. Has to be here. Yeah. So, and it depends on your network device. You may have different configurations. Don't worry about exam. You won't have these questions about exam, how to configure your on-prem gateway. But for the real world, you may need it. And depends on your device, you may have different configurations of your network device. Let's find like something like Cisco. It's supported, and for some of those I have configuration guidance. Let me click here, and how to configure my Cisco SA. So that's the guidance here, step-by-step guidance, especially when it's interested how to configure our local Cisco. So that's configuration for ISA. So for any device, you have different configurations, and you may not have. Sorry, I missed that. You may not have information about all of the device, especially if you use something simple like I don't know, MikroTik, something like that. You don't have it here, but you can configure VPN with them as well. But you need to do it yourself, or you may find something like MikroTik. I think it's correct. Azure VPN. Creating side-to-side VPN with Azure and MikroTik. And here you may find it somewhere in blog. But as I mentioned before, it's just a VPN site. It's just IPsec VPN, so you may configure it manually, but it takes lots of steps. But don't worry about exam. You don't need to know it for the exam. In the exam, we don't have this on-prem connectivity, but for your understanding, to understand this process better, you should know it. All right, so I have a connectivity from this gateway site. Let me go to another gateway and configure my second gateway. Scale connections, and as you can see here, I don't need to do anything with that. So when I configure it, when I configure it side to side, of course I need to configure both sides. But when I configure my VNet to VNet, configure one side is enough. So now it's connecting, and of course no data was sent or received. But generally, I configured VPN between two regions, and my virtual machines and these subnets, I mean not subnets, but these networks can communicate each other via VPN. So that's about VPNs, and VPNs is not option. How can we connect to network together? VNet to VNet is not an option. How can I configure two VNet networks? And what is good about VPN, we can configure not only our Azure resources, but we can also configure, for instance, if you have other cloud providers, you can configure VPN between another cloud provider. What should you also know about VPNs is VPN SKUs. Let me go a little back. So let me click here. What is VPN gateway? SKUs, gateway SKUs. You need to know what's the difference between these gateways. For instance, you may have questions, especially on AZ500 exams, but also on 103. What gateway, what SKU gateway you need to configure to achieve some goals. For instance, you may need to connect 10 VNets to each to 10 VNets, and you need to have configuration as cheap as possible. What SKU you need to choose, and you can see differences between the SKUs here on this table. As you can see here, depends on SKU, we have different configurations like maximum number of tunnels, or maximum speed, maximum P2S. P2S means point to site. We can also configure point to site, by the way. So it depends. So please check this this table and just be aware what's the difference between different SKUs. And basic is the most basic, or the most simple, and it doesn't support BGP. All right. So let me jump to these are SKUs. 222 express route. Express route connectivity. Because you'll have express route on the exam. You'll have these questions about express route, so we should know what express route is, even if you don't work with express route. So what express route is? Express route, that's a dedicated connection from your company to Azure data center directly, or via some partners, usually via partners. That's a really good option to make your connection more stable, fast, and secure. And in case of express route, as you can see here, it says cost effective for transfer of data. That may be cost effective in the long term, because as you know, maybe you know, maybe not, that communications between from Azure, so traffic to Azure is free, but from Azure may cost money to you. And if you have lots of huge traffic from Azure, it will cost you additionally. So traffic from Azure via express route is much less expensive. So you may save money on that. But express route, that's you need to invest in this route, because you know it costs money. You have to pay to a partner. But if you use Azure really intensively and in the long term, you may save money on data transfer as well. All right, so express route. And by the way, express route may be used not only with Azure services, but with Office 365 as well. If you have Office 365, you may use it with express route as well. All right, so express route capabilities. You should remember them because you may have questions on the exam. Of course, you won't have this labs about express routes, but you may have some questions. So that's a layer 3 connectivity with redundancy, and you can connect to all regions within a geography. For instance, in America, in Europe. But if you want to have global connectivity, that's a premium add-on. It will cost a bit more. And you can use express route across on-premise connectivity, and it's called ExpressRoute Global Reach. Then bandwidth options, it's from 50 megabytes to 10 gigabytes. And the biller model we have different: unlimited, metered, and premium. And some options like ExpressRoute Global Connectivity works with premium model. So we have different type of connections with ExpressRoute. So it's like cloud exchange. In this case, we can have ExpressRoute with number of our locations, or point-to-point. In this case, we can configure a particular on-premise site to connect to Azure. Let me just show how to configure that. If I go to my Azure and go to my gateway, I configure ExpressRoute here, and I need to have ExpressRoute circuit, of course. So I don't have it, of course. But how to configure that? You use this VPN gateways, but but connection type will be ExpressRoute. Connection type is ExpressRoute. What else? What else? You can have coexistence with site-to-site VPN and ExpressRoute. Why may you need to have that? For different reasons. First of all, you can have different routes. For instance, you may have a route from one traffic you may send via ExpressRoute, and other traffic you may send via ExpressRoute. So you may have different routes in this case. What else? In what other case you may use that for failover? For instance, maybe your ExpressRoute has some problems. Maybe your partner that you work with have problems with connectivity, and in this case, you may use just internet and VPN to reach your Azure. So you may configure it in this way. Have VPN connectivity and ExpressRoute. All right, so that's about ExpressRoute. I can't show you a lot here because I don't have an ExpressRoute. And let's talk about practice questions. Okay, question number 1. You deployed app in Azure VM and connected to it via RDP from Bastion host in the same network. After you stop your VM and you launch it again, you can't connect via RDP anymore. What may be a reason for this issue? I know this question is quite complicated. Let me just discuss it in different parts. So you deployed an app in Azure VM and connected via RDP from Bastion host in the same virtual network. So what does it mean? It means that probably network security group already have a rule that allow communication from your Bastion host to this app. So it's not an issue with network security groups. And because you can communicate from your network, from the same virtual network, you probably don't use public IP. And we don't have any information about firewall, so probably the question is the private IP changed. for this host? Let's see. Yeah, the answer is that private IP is changed. So next question, you have web app in Azure VM and you want to migrate it to a different region, but you want to retain the same public IP address. Is it possible or not? We didn't talk about that, but we cannot retain the same public IP address. Of course, we can migrate, we can detach public IP address from one VM from network adapter and attach it to another VM. And in this case, you will move your IP address from one machine to another, but we cannot move a public IP address from one region to another. So public IPs, they connect to the region. Next question. You configure static IP for public IP address and associate it with Azure Application Gateway. Will this IP remain the same after Application Gateway restart? And as I showed you before, you cannot do that, and the answer is no. You can have static public IP and associate it with Application Gateway, only dynamic. All right, question number 4. You deploy 2 Windows VMs named VM1 and VM2 in the same network VNet1. Configuration of network security groups in the table below. You need to connect VM2 to VM1 via RDP. What do you need to configure first? So look at this table. You have 2 VMs in the same network, and probably in the same subnet. And what do you need to connect VM2 to VM1? For network security group that's called to VM1, RDP is not allowed, and for VM2, RDP is allowed, and for network security group, RDP is allowed. You have to do nothing because inside of the network, communication inside the network is allowed. You have to do anything with that. And question number 5. You deploy 2 Windows VMs named VM1 and VM2 in the same network VNet1. Configuration of NSGs in the table below. You need to connect from the internet to VM1 via RDP. What you need to configure first? So almost the same VNet, the same configuration of network security groups, but now I want to connect not from inside of the network, but from outside, from the internet. What do you need to configure? So for the network, for the VNet, for the subnet, RDP is allowed. But as you can remember, each rule evaluates separately. So if RDP is not allowed for the network security group that associated with VNet, then you can't connect with RDP. So you need to allow RDP in network security group. Or you can do something else. That's a weird stuff, of course, but you can do it. You can deassociate your NSG2 and associate it with VM1. But it's a weird answer. So the general answer is allow RDP in network security group 1. All right, so that's about our questions. I hope they were informative for you, and the whole session was informative. Don't forget about my Learn. In Learn, you may fill your gaps in your knowledge and find some courses about particular technology. So that's about our network connectivity. We were quick. Not usually. Usually we do it. Usually it takes more time, but we were quick. Let me start to share my screen, and let's see if we have any questions. So the question is, let me answer the question. The question. Then I will wrap up the session and give a word to Devyani. All right. So the question is how to find which domain a VM belongs from Azure portal if no DNS is tagged with domain name in the portal. I think you mentioned that your virtual machine connected to Active Directory or Azure AD, and you want to know to which domain it's connected to. I don't see it from the portal interface. I don't remember that from the portal interface. You can do from PowerShell, but not from the interface. I don't remember it in portal interface. So the answer is no. From the portal, you cannot do it, or unless I don't remember that I didn't see this option. Let me double check it really quickly, but I think the answer is no. You cannot do it from the portal. Let's see. I don't see this option, so no, it cannot do it from the portal. All right. So what else? So the question is, can I show you PowerShell if it's fine? I need to find them. Find it first. Okay, I will do it, but let me wrap up the session. So I will do it, but let me wrap up session first. So another question: what about the VM peering? What about them? The question is, what about the VM peering? About our pin? Because we configure VM peering. Oh, VM peering. I get. No, you don't have VM peering. You have VNet peering. Peering between two VNets, but you cannot peer two virtual machines. You peer VNets for version between, and in this case, communication between virtual machine may be allowed when you configure peering between virtual networks, but you cannot peer two virtual machines. So VM peering is not possible. VM peering, only VNet peering. All right, so let me wrap up the session and switch to demo again and play with PowerShell to see what the main virtual machine belongs to. So, thank you for your participation. This session was about networking. Not everything in networking I can show because for express route or VPNs, it's quite hard to show the result, but you can see the process. And usually in the exam, they expect that you know how to configure that, but you don't have to, um, make it work. You don't have to make even in the lab. You don't have to configure VPN to make it work. You may just need to configure just gateway, but you don't need to configure the real connectivity. So I hope it was informative for you. That was about networking, and you should really know well network security groups and anything else, and DNS and networking. You should know them because we have some questions about networking in this exam. So I will give a word to Divyani, and she will ask you some questions about this session. And Divyani, please don't stop this session after your questions, and I will share my screen again and try to play with PowerShell.
Sure. Okay. Thank you so much. Now, as Sergey mentions, I would like to ask a couple of questions related to the feedback of the session. The question and the options will appear on your screen now. I would request all the participants to share their feedback through poll questions. Thank you so much. And the last question will appear on your screen now. Please let us know if the session has helped you gain knowledge on the topic. Thank you so much for your feedbacks for the poll questions. Now I would ask Sergey to take over for the demo, and then we can do the closing. Sergey, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. So
Sure.
Let me share my screen again.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has, but
Yeah,
my
the screen is visible now.
All right. So for everybody who don't want to see that, thank you so much for the participation, and we will see you tomorrow. About how to know the domain name, let's try to play with that. That's a question from one of the participants. Maybe others not interested in that, but we have some time, so we have almost 15 minutes for that, so we can try. All right, so first we can try to see from PowerShell something like Azure VM, but I think it won't show me if I just type my Azure VM. I can see some information about this VM. Let me try to take one VM, like get Azure VM name. Let's take WS19. Let's try CTF DC and the format list. And we have FQDN here, but this FQDN is an Azure portal. It's not inside of the virtual machine. So we cannot find this information from outside. We need to get inside of this virtual machine and see the virtual machine name. So that will be just normal. Just try to enter session CTF DC access denied. What is denied? Oh yeah, I remember. It's a different commandlet from this PowerShell. What else we could do? Let's try to see that enough. Here. Retrieve AD domain name Azure VM. Create and verify. It looks like it doesn't have any information. There's no such a case. So the only option that I see is to use our just normal request, like it retrieve the host name from this machine and the domain name with normal PowerShell commandlets. So it's not an Azure special. We just connect to virtual machine and invoke command there. So from Azure, like get Azure VM, we cannot see information from inside of the virtual machine, but we need to retrieve this domain name with normal PowerShell commandlet, like invoke command. I don't remember how can we retrieve domain name, which commandlet we use to retrieve domain name. Maybe, let's see, something like get what? AD domain, maybe something like that. Or maybe just normal host name has to give me this information. hostname. Hostname has to give me information about domain. So I would say that there is no any special way how to retrieve this information, but we can do it with just normal commands. If you wish, I can play with that, and just because I need time to play with that. If you will attend on the next session, for instance tomorrow, or you'll just drop me an email, and we will. I will show you how to do that because I need to figure it out. If you're fine with that. So generally, I don't see any ways directly from Azure to do that, but I can experiment. Is it fine for you?
There is no response in the Q&A.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
Okay, so there's email address to
Yeah.
send that to. All right, I will. Okay, so thank you for participation. I want to see. We'll see you tomorrow on the session about data protection. What else? And routing and data protection. All right, see you tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Sergey. And thank you so much for making it really interesting for the audience. I would like to thank our participants for their active participation throughout the session, and I hope you enjoyed watching the whole session. And more importantly, you have gained insight to Microsoft Azure certification. We'll see you again tomorrow in our fourth session, which is monitoring and data protection with network traffic management. Till then, you all have a wonderful day ahead, and thank you so much for being with us today. Bye-bye.